Well, Putin offered a ceasefire on energy infrastructure, and in less than 24 hours, I'm not exactly sure of the exact time it took Putin to break it, but in less than 24 hours, Putin has attacked Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Whoopsie doopsie, you know, as we've always said, you cannot trust Putin. Um, anyway, one of the things that has, I think, been an upside of this war is the fact that Europe has realized, yes, it does have to rearm, that it has to play, I think, a more active security role in its own defense. Not only that, but now with things going on in America, and as someone quite aptly described it, America flipping between Jekyll and Hyde like every 4 years, um, it has made Europe really realize uh, sometimes you may not be able to rely on America, and that Trump, I think, really intends to abandon Europe, and that means we would be left to essentially Vladimir Putin's saber rattling, threatening invasion with his military. How then should we respond? Well, easy. We just go, oh, you're going to threaten us? Well, okay. Here's our saber rattle back. It is very obvious. I think we are going to end up with troops in Ukraine, and I think that would be the right thing to do. I think that would be very, very much the right thing to do. As I keep on saying it needs to be us, France, Germany, Poland. We need to be in there, and we need to be like, right, if you come again, you're going to be coming directly into us, and there will be consequences for that. And I think that will stop Putin going after certainly more of Ukraine, that's for sure. But one of the big consequences is Germany's military rearmament program. There was just announced yesterday a massive German military rearmament boost approved by the parliament. Not only is it going to be used to sort of rebuild German military and sort of rearm Germany as well, but it's also going to spend a lot of infrastructure on building as well in Ukraine. And Ukraine needs a lot of that infrastructure, rebuilding, and certainly for, well, the future, just in case. So it is good to sort of, see this happen. And of course, you've got to remember, right at the beginning of this war, well, back in 2022, when this started, there was a huge scandal in Germany that came out that at the rate we were seeing shells being used in this war, turned out Germany actually had a stock of shells that would have lasted them 2 days. Now, that definitely seems to change, and it is good that you are now seeing Germans take their own defense as well as the European defense a lot more seriously, really realizing, well, we can't count on the US, so we've got to defend ourselves. I think this is one of the biggest takeaways, to be honest, of all this. And we still don't know what the full details of the ceasefire, will it progress? Well, given the fact that Putin's already broke it, who knows? But there will be, of course, consequences. Other things will happen, and we still don't know how, of course, this will fold out. Like I say, we'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks on this. But yeah, one of the things that is happening is Germany's rearmament, and this does, I think, really put a problem into Putin's plans, because he wanted a lot weaker Germany for sure. In Europe's defense, and Germany now rearming means that you've now got, 3 of the major European economies, dedicated now to rearming and having a serious, defense mentality when it comes to this. That will make Putin certainly think twice about further invasions into Europe where you have that. And of course, other countries, it's sort of rethinking about their defense ideas and their defense priorities as well. So this has been, a long time coming, but it is finally happening. So we're going to go over this now, actually from the Kyiv Independent, to see what they've had to take on this. And I believe this comes from actually a Spanish writer on this, what they're saying about this for like the good of all of Europe as well. So we're going to get into this because I think this does raise some very good points, and some good stuff as well about the future of defense, and of course the possibility that, well, what if Trump just goes, sorry, but I'm taking all my toys away from Europe, because we've got to be careful of that. We really have to be careful of that. That's why everyone's now like, right, we're rearming. So before we do go on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the One Foundation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, you can become a Patreon member down below as well. And of course, it is Wednesday as well, so there will be a Pony Club membership video up as well. So let's crack on then into this. So this is from like the Kyiv Independent. Germany's military rebirth is, of course, Europe's best bet against Putin. So when the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, he knew that he was going to upend Europe's security order. But this was more of a tactical gambit than actual calculated strategy, and he could not have predicted of what would follow. Though the US President Donald Trump's return to the White House has now caught Europe flat-footed, it is still keen to keep Putin walking away a winner. For now, Putin seems to hold all the cards. The transatlantic relationship is fracturing as Trump's isolationist administration criticizes its European allies and now casts doubt on its commitment to NATO. Worse, Trump appears to now be alienating the United States with Russia in the Ukraine war. While he has threatened to impose new sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and peace deal are reached, he has blamed the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, for the fighting and suspended military aid and intelligence. But, of course, that currently is back on. But remember, if you've seen Russia's demand, no military aid, no intelligence sharing. But the war will still continue. But there'll be no military aid or intelligence for Ukraine. But the war will still continue. Yeah. But, of course, Europe still has a chance to, of course, turn things around. Already, it is now abandoning its post-Cold War end of history mindset, and according to which international law reigned now supreme. European militaries were, of course, for keeping peace, not fighting wars, and the US could be counted for to safeguard European security. Finland and Sweden were the first perhaps to actually realize that, quote, history is back, and that their accession to NATO in 2023 and 2024 respectively provided a major boost to the Atlantic's northern flank. And now the European Union also now appears to be coming to terms with its new security situation, just having announced $840 billion worth of a rearmament plan. Even Germany, for which a return of history is now particularly fraught, it is preparing now to rearm. Incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz is now likely coalition partners have also agreed to a 500 billion euro infrastructure fund to loosen now fiscal rules to allow now for greater investment in defense. This significance should not be underestimated. Since the end of World War II, Germany has eschewed from hard power in favor of the soft kind, serving as an engine of the European integration and the bulwark of the rules-based world order. Beginning in the 1960s, this included the pursuit of constructive engagement, a foreign policy approach known as Ostpolitik, with the Soviet Union and then Russia. This explains the former Chancellor Angela Merkel's embrace of the Russian energy supplies, despite the objections from other EU members and the US. Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine drove a complete stake through the heart of the Ostpolitik, where within days Merkel's successor, Olaf Scholz, announced the epoch challenge of the Zweiwelt in Germany's defense and foreign policy. But it is Merz who is now set to truly break from Germany's post-war past. This change will, of course, require the country now to confront its most daunting and destructive ghosts of history. For starters, there is the fiscal revolution. Germany has very frugally been a source of considerable tension, of course, in the EU, particularly during the Eurozone debt crisis of the early 2010s. But Germans, not least Merkel, recall all too well how hyperinflation had now paved the way for the rise of Adolf Hitler. And in 2009, Merkel's very first government introduced the constitutional restriction on stauncher budget deficits of 0.35% of GDP, annually known as the debt brake. Against that backdrop, Merz is now overhauling all these borrowing rules, including modification and the possibilities of the elimination of the debt brake, and it represents a radical change in Germans' priorities. So already, as you can see here, fundamentally, things are changing in Germany. Fundamentally, they are taking a different, radical approach to this. And this is what we need to do here in the UK as well. We need to really break with past ideas and pursue completely new ones and not be afraid to, do, quote, again, radical ideas on this. Just certainly going in the austerity direction is not that way. More broadly, Merz now appears to embrace European leadership. Despite, of course, being the EU's largest economy, Germany has long been very reluctant to assume a very genuine leadership role in Europe, particularly in the security domain. The combination, the combination of Russian revanchism and US isolationism, however, has now made that stance untenable. This is what I think was been coming for a long time. I think this has been coming for a long time. Germany, obviously, for historical reasons, has been very, very reluctant to step up and take genuine leadership roles within Europe. And obviously, for historical reasons. And, I think you can understand that. I think you can understand some countries, turning around and maybe thinking that. But here we are in 2025. World War II had ended, a significant quite some time ago at this point. We have to move on from that. We have to be able to react to the realities of what's going on now. And Germany, I think, absolutely should be more at the forefront of leadership when it comes to things like in the EU, be it over security stuff, even on the world stage. So I would like to see that really pursued more from Germany. I understand reasons why, of course, World War II, etc. But that is over and it is time. The world has now changed and Germany must change with it. And we are seeing changes. We are seeing very significant changes in Germany that are starting to change that. And Germany is starting to react, which is very good in my opinion. So, as Europe's, of course, most populous country, stated now in the continent's very geostrategic center, Merz says, Germany must now take greater responsibility for leadership on defense, which, again, I think would be good. Very good indeed, as we've always said. To avoid a repeat of the Munich Agreement of 1938, when France and Britain forced Czechoslovakia to cede territory to Hitler, setting the stage for World War II, Europe must now step up quickly to improve Ukraine's position on the battlefield, and thus at the negotiating table. Fortunately, substituting lost US financial aid will not be as difficult as Trump would have us believe. Currently, to date, Europe has provided far more support for Ukraine's war effort in dollar terms than the US has. And this is it. I love the fact Europe stepped up massively to help Ukraine. I love the fact that happened. And that even if the US should withdraw financial aid, the Ukrainians know they still have the Europeans backing them. So it is not going to be too difficult. You might see Europe may have to put more money into that, but Europe knows and understands why it is crucial to keep a fully open, sovereign, and democratic Ukraine, we know the consequences of what would happen, because it would only have furthermore provocations, furthermore, flashpoints, and with Russian revanchism targeting not only more of Ukraine, but other states in the Baltic, and of course the Latvia, Lithuania as well. You only have to read Putin's massive, long, rambling essay he wrote about reforming like this new Russian empire, which again includes like not only control but indirect control through countries, as you see currently in as we've seen recently in the Romania elections. Um, there is a lot of stuff. Putin has ideas to try and break up Europe as much as possible, to try and get rid of the EU so that all those countries then can't work together. Because if Europe works together against Russia, doesn't stand a chance. So back to this. So, of course, fulfilling the weapons gap would, of course, however, be far more challenging and probably impose an all-important short term. And that is the key problem. And it is to do with weapons technology. We have invested in smaller, more high-tech weaponry in the West. And that is, missile weaponry. So like the HIMARS stuff. But that can take a long time to build, but you can't build them in vast quantities. Whereas an artillery shell, you can build in vast quantities very, very quickly, which is, what Russia has sort of invested in. It's just gone, quality over quantity over quality, shall we say? Whereas we've gone quality over quantity, and in some cases that has proven to be worked. Like I say, you've got to look at the Javelin missile system, the HIMARS system, very small, and capable high-tech weapon systems that have proven to have a very dramatic effect on the battlefield, especially against the Russians. So it is that weapons stuff. That is why you are seeing European defense industries at this moment in time, their stock is skyrocketing, because everyone knows these companies are now going to be at the forefront for European defense. So once a peace agreement is reached, Europe will have to act as its guarantor. Absolutely, fundamentally agree on that. We are going to have to be the guarantors of that agreement. And that also means delivering an effective deterrence against Russian aggression. A credible nuclear umbrella is essential. That is why Merz has suggested replacing the US nuclear warheads in Europe with French and British alternatives. There is even talk of Germany becoming a nuclear power itself. Like I said before, these conversations have been happening in Germany. Now, I would personally like to see the we and the French get together and extend our nuclear umbrella, because that means there's less nuclear weapons, which I think would be better, because I don't want more nuclear weapons. I ideally want, zero nuclear weapons, but I understand, we have to have nuclear weapons, especially, when someone like Putin is in charge of Russia. So I would prefer, shall we say, to see, us and France get together and expand our nuclear umbrella, so that you don't have then to rely on the US for this. So that would be something to see, and something I'd like to see done. But let's finish this off then. So when NATO intervened in the Kosovo War in 1999, Germany's then Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder ruled out sending ground troops to fight in a country that had once been occupied by the Wehrmacht was completely unthinkable. Today, Merz seems now to at least recognize the unthinkable has now become necessary. Only if Germany and Europe as a whole puts aside its moral and political inhibitions can it continue to perform its most important role as a global force for peace and a defender of democratic principles. And that's what I very, very, very much think. I very, very much think that. With the way that America is going, even more incredibly isolationist, that potentially just leaves us and Europe as the shining city on the hill, in many ways, to use that term. Um, I think we do have to. I think we have to sort of recognize that. I really do think we have to recognize that. I'm really glad to see Germany rearming and going in this direction. I, like I say, hope that we do become the guarantors, that we do end up having boots on the ground. I would also like to see Turkey get involved in this as well, because they have been very, very pro-Ukrainian out throughout all of this. The biggest problem, of course, is their beef with with Greece. If that could somehow be solved, we could have sent tons of weapons that they used that they still use to Ukraine. But because of their beef with each other, Greece and Turkey, hasn't happened. But there you go. So interesting times, of course, ahead. We will keep an eye on how this develops, because I think this will be very important. But as we've said, 24 hours into this, energy ceasefire, and Putin broke it. Putin broke it in less than 24 hours. So what does this say then to future ceasefire agreements that might be agreed with Russia, or say, yeah. And like I say, at the end of the day, if we're going to be guarantors, we have to have some sort of response. What is our response going to be, in this? So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.